The Sioux City Strangler carried Sarah Small and her mother's lifeless bodies to his car, each wrapped in blankets pulled from the beds in the house. It was 4 a.m. and raining hard, and the neighborhood was shut tight. He kept a lookout for early risers, but he didn't spot anyone. With the radio playing loud, he drove out to that vacant bit of land near the Lighthouse Inn where he'd left Sherry. He moved the bodies, freezing in the cold and smoking a cigarette, and placed them in the tall grass, still wrapped in the blankets. He left without ceremony, without admiring his work or much of a second thought at all. It was too cold to linger. The sun was coming up by the time the Sioux City Strangler returned to the motel. He was soaking wet and practically shaking from the cold despite having the heater on high in the car. He parked in the only available spot at the far edge of the lot. He looked around for people as he got out of the car, still on guard. This close to Christmas, though, everybody checked into the motel was on vacation. They weren't getting up at 5 a.m. to get to work in the freezing cold. As he locked the car, he spotted someone coming out of the motel office. Bundled up in a heavy navy blue jacket, a gray wool hat, and a Christmas scarf, the motel manager was unloading stacks of cups for coffee and cases of creamer from the back of a rust-colored van. His leisurely pace made the Sioux City Strangler's blood boil. After a few minutes, the motel manager went back inside and closed the door hard, making sure it didn't stick and let cold air in. The Sioux City Strangler flicked his cigarette away and walked toward his room, his head on a tilt, to check for passersby. He made it to his room without being spotted and stripped his wet clothes off, leaving them in a pile by the door. He turned the shower on and stood there shaking, waiting for the water to get hot. He lit another cigarette to calm his nerves as he waited, but put it out after a couple of drags. It's hard to say that the Sioux City Strangler felt any sort of guilt in that moment. In one of our interviews, he recalled that moment as one of discomfort. He remembered the cold, hard rain and the awful drive out to the Lighthouse Inn. He never used the word guilt or expressed true feelings of remorse, though. He did say that he hadn't wanted to hurt Sarah Small, who seemed like a nice girl. He said he often thought of her and that night in the bowling alley. It hadn't seemed like much at the time, but it really was the calm before the storm. This is the story of the Sioux City Strangler, a man who terrorized the great state of Iowa for nearly 10 years before making his way to California for a little fun in the sun and a fresh crop of citizens to terrorize. I'm your host, Mary Buckley, and you're listening to Sioux City Strangler, the podcast. The Sioux City Strangler turned on the television around 6 a.m. As he watched, he felt a sharp pain in his temples take hold. He got up to get a glass of water from the sink in the bathroom and drank it quickly before refilling it and walking back to the bed. He put his head down on the pillow and closed his eyes, listening to a string of commercials for laundry soap and pet food playing in the background. Before long, he fell asleep, though he woke up often, tossing and turning and rubbing his temples with the heels of his hands, trying to get some relief. Around 7:30, restful sleep finally arrived, though it wouldn't last for long. At 11:17, a knock on the door woke him up. Dressed in just his underclothes, he scrambled to find something clean and dry to wear. As he combed through the dresser drawers, part of him worried that it might be the cops on the other side of the door. "Hold on," he said loudly but politely. "Just a second." Another series of knocks made the Sioux City Strangler grit his teeth. He lit a cigarette before opening the door in an attempt to look casual. "Hey there," said the motel manager, still bundled up in his cold weather gear. Now the Sioux City Strangler could see that he had a stupid Christmas sweater with smiling elk on beneath his jacket. "Oh, it's just you," he said. "What is it?" "Well, checkout time is 11, said the man, looking down at the worn brown carpet beneath his feet. "So, what's your point? I'm not checking out today." "Oh, well, come on, spit it out," barked the Sioux City Strangler. "What do you need from me? I was trying to sleep." "Oh, well, the guest book says you're checking out today. We need to make up the rooms, you know. It's a very busy time of year. I don't want to have to turn people away because we couldn't have a room ready for them." "Horseshit," said the Sioux City Strangler. "I'm not checking out until the 25th, Christmas." "Oh, That's not what the book says, sir." God damn the book. I said I was checking out on the 25th. Well, the book, the motel manager started to say. Hell, I like it here. I might even extend my stay into the new year. I like our time together, don't you, boss? I especially like the vending machines and the good coffee that you personally make each morning. I really love how it takes 10 goddamn minutes to get any hot water from a shower around here. The motel man sighed, looking exasperated. Look, buddy, can you give me a break here? It's Christmas. Oh, it's Christmas, so you shouldn't have to do your job? Is it honestly that hard to write the correct date down in your little book? I paid you until the 25th. No, sir, you paid me until the 23rd. I'll be happy to show you the receipt and our posted holiday rates if you want to come to the office with me. The Sioux City Strangler took a deep drag off his cigarette and blew the smoke in the motel manager's direction before responding. I don't want to come to the office with you. I want to go back to bed. I booked this goddamn room until the 25th. I don't know what else to tell you. You're out of luck, pal. Besides, it's Christmas, right? The Sioux City Strangler put his hand on the doorknob to let the manager know it was time for him to go. Sir, if you want to stay, you'll need to pay for the room. Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you to check out. It's a very busy time of year. We don't make much money in January, so The Sioux City Strangler cut him off. You come in here and wake me up, demand more money from me, even though I already paid you? Are you out of your goddamn mind? What is wrong with you? I know this place is a shithole, but are you really that desperate that you have to try and cheat your guests out of a few bucks? Sir, I promise you that I'm not trying to cheat you. You paid until the 23rd. Maybe you thought you paid until the 25th, but you paid until the 23rd. Either you can pay the next few days and stay in your room, or I can call the authorities right now and get them involved. The Sioux City Strangler looked into the motel man's eyes. He wasn't bluffing. Shit, he was probably scared, he thought. He was right to be scared, but the cops couldn't get involved. Not now. Not after last night, and not after Sherry. The Sioux City Strangler walked to the ashtray and put out his cigarette. He motioned to the motel man, signaling that he should come into his room. He hesitated, but entered anyway. Seated in one of the chairs by the window, the Sioux City Strangler tried to turn on the charm. Look, pal, I'm sorry if I just came off as rude. I haven't been sleeping well, you know what I mean? It's a problem I get all the time. It makes me kind of unpleasant sometimes, especially around the holidays. Yeah, I understand, said the man, just happy not to have him yelling in his face anymore. So I really didn't pay for the next couple of nights? I could have sworn that I did. I did come in after a long business trip, though. Maybe I wrote it down wrong. The motel manager just nodded. Oh, geez, I'm sorry. I feel like an ass, said the Sioux City Strangler. Christmas isn't really the best time of year since I lost my mom. I'm sorry to hear that, said the man. Look, if you want to come by the office later today when you feel a little more rested, we can settle up. No, I'll do it right now, he said. How much do I owe you? Holiday rate is $11 per night, he said, so $22 for tonight and tomorrow night. And what if I need to stay longer? Up to you, said the man. $11 until the end of the year. Okay, tell you what. What about I pay until the 27th? I don't know about after that. I gotta figure it out after that. He did his best to seem like a road warrior with no home base and no personal life to speak of, hoping to get the motel man's sympathies or at least make him feel less afraid. Sure, said the man. Seriously, though, just drop it by the office later. I'll be there all day. Thanks, boss, said the Sioux City Strangler, this time with a warm, gentle tone. I'm going to try and get a little more sleep then. The motel man stood up and exited the room, pulling the door closed behind him. Dumb bastard, said the Sioux City Strangler, exhaling smoke out of his nose. Ruined a perfectly good morning, right, Ted? He looked at the TV and the newsman on the screen blathering on about busy local shopping malls and last-minute Christmas gifts. We'll be right back after this word from Whitewood Tactical Clothing and Hunting Apparel.
The world seems like it's gone sideways, right? When you're left to fend for yourself, you need gear that's going to keep you and your family safe. That's where Whitewood Tactical Clothing and Hunting Apparel comes in. With true armed forces level gear available on our site and in store, we can help you find everything from tactical pants to military boots and flight suits. We've even got women's and kids' sizes so you can find the right stuff for the whole family. Don't forget to check out our selection of hunting gear while you're with us. We've got ultra-durable gear for every hunter, whether you're working with a modern rifle or a basic buck knife. Visit Whitewood Tactical Clothing and Hunting Apparel online today to take your readiness to the next level.
The Sioux City Strangler tried to go back to sleep, but he couldn't. The motel man had ruined that. After 45 minutes of tossing and turning, he threw on a pair of jeans and walked to the motel office to pay for his room. He got a cup of coffee, this time saying thank you to the motel man on the way out. So tired he felt a little sick to his stomach, the Sioux City Strangler took another shower to try and shake off the feeling. With his last razor blade, he shaved slowly and carefully, staring into the mirror and listening to the TV news in the background. He thought about trying to find a game show or something to put on, but he didn't care enough to walk over to the TV. The Sioux City Strangler looked through the clothes hung neatly in the closet and decided on a heavy navy blue knit sweater and a pair of brown slacks. His socks were cream-colored with a brown diamond pattern woven throughout. He wore his brown boots and a heavy coat as he walked to his Pontiac. He drove aimlessly once again, thinking about how he spent so much of his time driving aimlessly. He lit a cigarette out of habit and held it in his hand without smoking it. His stomach was too sour. He pulled into Peg's, a tiny place a dozen miles from his motel room, for something to eat. He hardly knew what time it was, but it didn't really matter. It was cold, but the sun was bright, at least for now. To his surprise, Peg's was busy with what seemed to be regular customers, many of whom were dressed in blue-collar workwear. He took a seat at one of the few available spots at the counter next to a man with grease stains on his hands and a hole in the thigh of his soiled jeans. The green metal clock above the orange coffee pot read 1:31. The Sioux City Strangler ate his ham and cheese sandwich with potato salad and a cup of coffee in silence. The man next to him looked like he wanted to talk, but the Sioux City Strangler angled his body away slightly, gazing into the case of pies, making it look like he was deep in thought. He was in no mood for a conversation about high school football or cars or gas prices. When he left Peg's, he wasn't quite sure where to go. He sure as hell wasn't going to go back to that bowling alley after what went down with Sarah Small. He remembered the nearby movie theater and drove back in that direction. As luck would have it, Sleeper was starting in about 5 minutes. He got a ticket and hustled inside to get popcorn before the show started, even though he'd just eaten. The movie was the perfect escape for the Sioux City Strangler, and about halfway through, his stomach finally settled down. He lit a cigarette and inhaled deeply as he watched the film. About 90 minutes later, he left the theater smiling. It was 4 o'clock now, and the Sioux City Strangler pulled into a gas station to buy cigarettes. After he paid the cashier and climbed back into his machine, a wave of exhaustion washed over him. He decided to head back to his room and try to take a nap. This time he managed to fall asleep in a matter of minutes, still dressed in his street clothes. The TV played in the background and changed from news to a sitcom to a holiday movie, all without the Sioux City Strangler waking up. Finally, at 11:20 p.m., he turned onto his side and opened his eyes to see the clock. "Jesus," he said out loud. The room was dark now, and only the TV made a sound. He watched the screen, but the news that was playing didn't interest him. The rumbling in his stomach did, though. He thought about finding an all-night diner or something, but the thought of facing the cold weather outside made him shiver under the blankets. Instead, he got out of bed and put on the shoes he'd been wearing earlier to walk to the vending machines. He bought a Coke and 2 bags of Ozark brand barbecue potato chips. Back in his room, he sat at the little table eating his snack in his underwear. The TV played a romantic black and white movie he'd never seen before. He thought of Maria and watched intently, only getting out of his chair to move to the bed during a commercial break. We'll be right back after this message from Gas Saver Fuel Additives.
The open road is calling your name, but out-of-control gas prices aren't doing you any favors. Gas Saver Fuel Additives can keep your car running smoothly and save you big bucks as you rack up the miles. Designed with a proprietary formula the competition just can't crack, Gas Saver Unleaded, High Performance, and Diesel Fuel Additives are in a league of their own. Show the road no mercy and burn rubber by putting gas saver fuel additives in your car or truck today.
Despite the extra-long unplanned nap he'd taken, the Sioux City Strangler found himself feeling tired as the credits rolled. After brushing his teeth, he turned the TV off and smoked a cigarette in the lamplight. As he drifted off to sleep, he thought of what he could bring for Maria the next night. In the morning, the Sioux City Strangler woke up early with a spring in his step. Perhaps the nearly 2 nights of sleep he'd had in the last 24 hours helped. Either way, he hummed, "We wish you a Merry Christmas," as he got dressed to visit the lobby for his morning cup of coffee. The lobby was empty when the Sioux City Strangler walked in, but he could smell the coffee right away. He helped himself to a cup and listened happily to the Christmas music playing over the small radio behind the desk. A woman holding a stack of papers walked out from the back room of the office and smiled, acknowledging the man drinking the coffee in the easy chair by the door. Where's the man?" asked the Sioux City Strangler. The woman looked a little confused, but caught on after a few seconds. "Oh, you mean my husband? Yeah, he's usually here, but he's got a pretty bad cold all of a sudden. He's resting up at home." "Ah, I see. Is he all right?" The woman smiled and nodded quickly. "I'm sure he will be. I'm just filling in for a day, maybe 2. Busy time of year, you know." Of course. That's mighty kind of you." "Well, that's what we do. Got to keep this place running. We're full up." The Sioux City Strangler got up and walked over to the coffee machine and poured himself another cup. He added cream and sugar and started toward the door. "Well, look, if you need anything, you just come find me. People can get weird, and I don't know about a woman alone here. You gonna be here late?" No, probably not. I don't know. You just find me if you need anything, okay? I'm here." Sure, I'll do that. Thanks." Without telling her his name or even his room number, he walked out the door with a satisfied smile on his face. The Sioux City Strangler spent the day with his head in the clouds, feeling the happiest he'd felt in as long as he could remember. He drove his Pontiac around town, aimlessly searching for some place to stop and get Maria a gift. His mind went to diamonds and furs and ornate jewel-encrusted brooches, but of course it was too early to buy any of those kinds of things. He settled on a good bottle of red wine from Hyder's, a known purveyor of fine wine and spirits in the downtown area. He even bought himself a good cigar, though he assumed he'd need to save it until after his date. It would be rude to smoke it in Maria's home. He'd decided to skip breakfast that day, feeling the jeans he'd put on as he went to get coffee dig into his hips a little too much. For lunch, he got a burger, but he ordered it without cheese. He even skipped the fries and got himself a big, bright red apple instead. He ate them both on the drive back to the motel. With the TV on again, the Sioux City Strangler undressed and got into bed. He was still a little hungry, but he wanted to have a good appetite for Maria. She always cooked so much, and he didn't want to disappoint her. He lit a cigarette and watched The Price is Right. Before long, he'd fallen asleep. At 2:02, the Sioux City Strangler woke up, feeling a bit dazed. He drank half of the cold cup of coffee he'd gotten from the burger place, though it was bitter and unpleasant now. He smoked a cigarette in bed, barely blowing the smoke out before taking another drag. He dropped the butt into the coffee cup and walked to the bathroom to get ready. The Sioux City Strangler showered and shaved, taking his time to avoid cutting that spot under his chin that bled for a half hour when he went too fast. He went too heavy on the aftershave and washed his face in cold water to get some of it off. With a towel wrapped around his waist, the Sioux City Strangler looked into the closet for something to wear. He remembered his joke about the wine-colored suit and laughed. Too bad he hadn't had time to get one, he thought. He tried on a black suit with a red tie, but it felt too formal. Frankly, it felt ridiculous. He wore suits all the time, but in this moment it was clearly wrong. He put it back in the closet, keeping only the white shirt on. He replaced the black suit pants with brown slacks with a rough woolen texture. He slipped a hunter green sweater over his white shirt and stepped back to look in the mirror. It looked right. Casual enough, but still presentable. Like something you'd wear to a family gathering, if you were part of a family that had family gatherings. The Sioux City Strangler pictured his mother at home, alone, warming up a can of baked beans on the stove, pushing hamburger meat around in a skillet. As he thought of her, he put on a pair of plain knit brown socks and cordovan cap-toe Oxfords, sitting on the edge of the bed. He ran a comb through his hair one more time before putting on his heavy coat. The weather forecast had said that snow was on the horizon, though he'd only heard about half of it as he drove through town in his Pontiac that morning. It wouldn't matter much, he thought. Maria's place would be warm, and a hot meal was waiting just for him. The Sioux City Strangler knocked on Maria D'Angelo's front door at 4:01. The whole apartment building was quiet, and his knock seemed to be the only sound in the neighborhood other than the light wind blowing fallen leaves down the street. Dressed in a perfectly seasonal red dress and a cream-colored apron with Christmas trees on it, Maria answered the door with a smile. She hugged the Sioux City Strangler and gave him a gentle kiss on the cheek before he even stepped foot inside. "Here you go," she said, offering him the glass of wine in her hand. "Well, thank you," he said. "Are you trying to get me drunk already?" She laughed at him, pouring another glass for herself in the kitchen. With that, he pulled the bottle he'd brought from inside his jacket and handed it to her. "My mother wasn't the type to say don't show up empty-handed, but I hear that's a thing." With another kiss on the cheek, Maria took the wine and put it on the counter by the fridge. "So, are you ready to get to work?" she asked. "Yep, if I leave here with all 10 of my fingers, I'll consider it to be a monumental failure." "Oh, you can't be that bad, can you?" "Only one way to find out." For the next 40 minutes, the two slowly prepped Maria's homemade tomato sauce, with her walking him through each of the steps and explaining the importance of each ingredient. To his credit, the Sioux City Strangler didn't cut himself even once as he chopped onions and diced tomatoes. "See, you're not that bad," she said. "You just need more practice." "Ah, yes, but why would I practice when you're so good at it already? Besides, I'm a world-class eater. I can eat more pasta than you, and I think that should count for something. Every chef needs a hungry crowd." "Well, yes, I suppose that's true." "Another glass?" She held up the wine bottle. "What the hell, it's Christmas, right?" As the pair drank, a comfortable silence washed over the apartment. Maria moved closer to him, silently hoping he'd put his arm around her as they looked out the small kitchen window. He didn't, but he did lean in a little closer, putting the back of his hand against hers. "I think it's starting to snow," she said. "Yeah, I hear it's going to be cold." After another silence, Maria spoke again. "How about some music? I always cook with music on." "Oh, no, don't make me listen to Christmas music." "You're such a grouch. I didn't say anything about Christmas music anyway, just music. If it happens to be Christmas music, then I can't control that. I'm here making pasta sauce. I don't tell them what to play on the radio." He rolled his eyes, but in a way that clearly said, "Yeah, okay, go ahead and turn on the radio, it's fine." The small radio lit up, and the tail end of a holiday song faded out. The radio man spoke, this time coming through crystal clear.
Christmas Eve, I'm so happy that Santa is almost here. What did you ask him for this year, boys and girls? A BB gun? Maybe something sweet under the tree? Well, if you wished for snow, you're in luck, because it's really going to be coming down tonight. So light a fire and settle in, because it's going to be a cold one.
Christmas music began playing again, and though he'd protested, the Sioux City Strangler was enjoying it. They listened to the music together, quietly sipping their wine as Maria prepared her special Christmas dessert without his help. He just sat at the table and watched, occasionally meeting her smile with his own. Just after 7 p.m., Maria declared that the sauce was ready and dinner was served. The Sioux City Strangler put his cigarette out and waited for his pasta to arrive. Dotted with 2 large meatballs, Maria grated Parmesan cheese over the top of the heavy plate in front of him. "Wow," he said, "I can eat a lot, but do you think I can eat this much?" "I believe in you," she said, going back to the kitchen to make her plate. Over dinner, the pair talked about the holidays, though Maria did most of the talking. She talked about family trips and the one Christmas she spent in Italy with her grandparents before they died. With no good holiday stories of his own, the Sioux City Strangler asked questions and smiled and laughed instead. It seemed to work, and the conversation flowed freely. After dinner, the Sioux City Strangler helped Maria wash and dry the dishes. With a couple of beers, they moved to the sofa and Maria turned on the TV. The evening news was on, and when Maria tried to change the channel, the Sioux City Strangler stopped her. On the screen was an older woman, likely in her late 70s, talking to a graying reporter in a silver suit. By her side was a man who appeared to be about the same age. They were holding hands. The woman told her story, her lips almost touching the microphone. She and her husband had arrived in town earlier that morning to visit their daughter and granddaughter to spend the holidays. When they got there, nobody answered the door. The couple went to get breakfast, thinking maybe they'd just gone out to do some last-minute shopping. They had arrived a little earlier than expected, after all. But when they returned over an hour later, there was still no answer. Their daughter's car was there, the engine cold, and a thin layer of dirt from dried rain built up on the hood and roof. The older couple talked to a next-door neighbor, but they hadn't seen any activity around the house in days. The neighbors said they'd assumed everyone was out of town. That's when the elderly couple phoned the police. "Oh, how awful," said Maria. "At Christmas time, too." "Yeah," said the Sioux City Strangler, staring at the TV without blinking. He could see they were standing in front of the house where he'd dropped Sarah Small off just a few nights before now. Maria looked at him and saw the worry in his face. What a kind man, she thought to herself, worried about these people he doesn't even know on Christmas. "Hey, how about that movie? This news stuff is depressing," she said. "Yeah, okay, I guess it is," said the Sioux City Strangler, doing his best to force a smile. Maria put down her beer and turned the dial on the TV. She went past more news and a series of commercials before she found a movie. "It's a Wonderful Life" lit up the screen. The Sioux City Strangler smoked a cigarette and turned his head to look out the window. The snow was really coming down now. Sioux City Strangler, the podcast, is a Past Due production and was recorded in sunny Los Angeles, California at Past Due Studios. This episode was written by Christopher Chase Godwin. Theme music was written and performed by Michael Wegner. Additional music was written and performed by Michael Wegner and Christopher Chase Godwin. Dialogue editing services were provided by Janet Berry. Additional editing by Karl Weiss at Past Due Studios. Mixing by Tommy Singh. Audio mastering provided by Renee Rojas. Learn more about the Sioux City Strangler by visiting SiouxCityStrangler.com and WeArePastDue.com now. You can also join the Sioux City Strangler fan club to get exclusive updates and access to limited edition merch. As a new fan club member, you'll receive a coupon code for 15% off your first order. This week, we need to thank our sponsors, Whitewood Tactical Clothing and Hunting Apparel and Gas Saver Fuel Additives. Both brands are offering a 10% discount with the code SCS for a limited time. Subscribe to Sioux City Strangler, the podcast, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major platforms today to get the next episode right away. That's all for Season 1, but we'll be back with Season 2 before you know it.